Good morning. My name is Georgette Greenlee. I am the Secretary of the Board for the Chicago Transit Authority. Our Strategic Planning and Service Delivery Committee meeting is scheduled to begin now. Due to some unforeseen emergencies, we will not be starting until 9:15. Thank you for your consideration and for your patience, and we just invite you to join us at 9:15. Ortiz.
Here.
Chairman Barclay.
Here.
Director Ortiz, you have a quorum. I will note for the record that we also have Director Jakes and Director Edie in attendance.
Thank you. Our first order of business is the approval of the September 11, 2024 meeting minutes, committee meeting minutes. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
This is a committee meeting for strategic planning, which is Director Lee, Director Requejo, Director Ortiz, and Chairman Barclay. So if we could please have our movement and our second Director Edie and members of the committee, that'd be great. Director Requejo, would you like this the second movement?
So moved.
Thank you very much. It's been properly moved and seconded that the minutes from September 11th, 2024 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Same.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing a route realignment of bus routes number 53 Pulaski, number N53 Pulaski Owl, and number 53A South Pulaski.
Good morning, Director.
Morning.
Good morning, Directors. Molly Poppy, the Chief Planning and Innovation Officer, and I am joined by Elsa Gutierrez, the Vice President of Service Planning and Scheduling. We're here today to talk about, there's actually two different ordinances coming before the committee today. One is for the 53 Pulaski and 53 South Pulaski realignment, and another is for the 93 California Dodge extension. So first and foremost, I do want to start with what our service goals have been for 2025 and frankly remain our service goals for 2025. We want to focus on creating a consistent and reliable frequent network across our service area. We think that is important both to support existing riders as well as continuing to encourage more riders and more rides. We also want to take a look at new mobility patterns and how people are moving throughout the city and where we can unlock those new rides. And we also want to take a look at persistent service gaps that we see and make sure that our network can continue to evolve to meet where we see service gaps and meet riders where they are. So very specifically today, the changes to the 53 and the 93 are focused on those goals of addressing some service gaps and also reaching new mobility patterns and new riders. So I also am going to take a slight liberty, Director Ortiz, if you will allow me. I want to talk through the frequent network very quickly with everyone. And there's also a couple other minor changes that we are doing as well. And so I wanted to just make sure to highlight those as well as part of this conversation. These are not requiring board approval, but they are important changes that will improve the rider experience. So first and foremost, the frequent network, we've launched 8 routes already in the spring of 25. We have another 4 routes coming on Sunday, June 15th. Those 4 routes are Madison, Cottage Grove, Cicero, and Chicago Avenue. And as a reminder, the frequent network does operate at 10 minutes or better service, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on the weekdays and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on the weekdays. The service increases on all of these various routes do vary based on how much service is already on the route, but what really riders can anticipate is improved service midday, improved service evening, and weekends. The first route that we're seeking board approval on is a change to the Pulaski corridor. It is a change to how the 53 and the 53A work together. Right now, the 53A and the 53 meet at 31st and Kaminsky. They do provide continuous service from Peterson up on the north to 115th and Springfield on the south. But there is no overlapping coverage where we do see high ridership needs. And there also is frankly, kind of a weird meeting point, if you will. It doesn't intersect at the orange line, and it doesn't sort of provide what we would anticipate more of that multimodal connection that we do want to see. And as we started to look at this route, what we've noticed is that there's high performing corridors on either side of this critical west side route on Western, Cicero, others. And when we look at the through traffic in this area, we actually see it should be closer to 1,600 as high as almost 4,000 rides through this area bounded by 31st down to about 76. But what we're seeing on the 53 and the transfers that we see between these routes is really only 360. So what we're noticing is this is not providing a good connection for our riders, and that there is a need to provide better connectivity and better throughput. So what we are proposing to do is extend the 53A. It's still going to start at Peterson. It will come down, it will service Daly College, and then it will lay over at Ford City Mall. This is a 6.5-mile extension to the 53 Pulaski, and this is also part of the frequent network. So not only are we extending this route, we're also providing 10 minutes or better service through to 76th Street. This provides connection with 18 east-west bus routes and 3 rail lines. Also, one of the reasons why we started to look at this and tackle this particular route was we heard from Daly College. Daly College reached out to us, that they did a survey of their students. And what the students said is a critical barrier for them to get to class was actually transportation. And so we've been working with Daly College in order to extend this route, and even talked with Daly College about having our bus lay over at their school. So it would really be like a full door-to-door service. It ultimately wasn't going to work for various reasons, but that just gives you the example of how excited Daly College was for this change. The other change that we're making is we are truncating the 53A. So the 53A, instead of extending all the way up to 31st and Kaminsky, it's going to have overlapping service from 76th up to the Pulaski Orange Line station. And so that is a 2.5-mile truncation of that route, but it does provide overlap with the 53, and also provides a better spot for individuals to transfer at the Orange Line Pulaski station. The final change that is coming with this whole realignment is we will now have the 82 Kimball Holman will move into the 31st and Kaminsky bus terminal. The 82 Kimball Holman, which is right here. What happens with the 82 Kimball Holman is it lays over on the street. That's not a great spot for the operators, not a great spot for the bus. So with the 53 and the 53A vacating 31st and Kaminsky, it will allow us to have a better layover spot for the operators, better access to bathrooms. With this whole change, we are anticipating an estimated 2,000 additional rides. And the cost of this overall extension is factored into the 2025 budget. So it is covered in the 2025 budget. The overall cost is estimated for an annual cost of $3.6 million with these various truncations and the frequent network addition. I'm going to keep going on with the 94 and the 93 realignment. What we're also looking to do is address a service gap on the California corridor. This is the second ordinance that is coming before this committee for board approval. Right now, the 93 California Dodge does end at Kimball Brown Line. It starts up in Evanston around the Davis Purple Line station. What we are proposing to do is to close a roughly 2-mile service gap that exists between Kimball and Western. What happens today is individuals have to either transfer at the Brown Line, and then for the 94 California, they may have to make multiple transfers in order to get further north of Addison. And what we are proposing is to send the 93 California Dodge through Kedzie. So it'll come through Kedzie, it will come down California, and then it will come and meet the blue line at Logan Square, and there will be an overlap between the 93 and the 94 at Addison, between Addison and Belmont. And just to sort of center you guys a little bit more, right here is where Lane Tech is. So this roughly California route comes around Lane Tech. As I mentioned, this closes a service gap on California Avenue that is about 2 miles, and it also facilitates a lot of transfers between various routes and the blue line. We have heard very specifically from the 33rd Ward, as well as top feedback to our customer feedback, that this is an extension and a service gap that riders would like us to close. So we're very eager to offer this particular extension. What is also happening as well is the 93 currently operates weekday and Saturday service. We will also be adding Sunday service to the 93. This is anticipated to add an additional 1,000 rides with the annual cost of $2.2 million. Lastly, I'm going to run through a couple changes that these are not seeking board approval on. They are minor changes, but I think that they are within the conversations that the board has had with the service planning team and with the agency, as well as what we've heard from our riders on the type of service that they want us to provide. So we are extending the number 4 Cottage Grove for owl service. So we will be extending the number 4 Cottage Grove from 63rd down to 95th Street. This is a 5-mile extension. This also is something that we've heard from our union partners, that they would like a layover spot at a station and not on the street. And so this does provide a safe location for our operators to lay over and access to a bathroom, as well as closing an important service gap on the south side. We're also extending the number 53 owl service. So this is also on Pulaski. We are extending the owl service on Pulaski. Previously, it stops just south of the Blue Line Forest Park branch at Harrison. We are extending it down to meet the 62 Archer owl service. So it does provide a 5.1 mile extension of that late night service on Pulaski. Lastly, for owl, we are also extending the 66 Chicago. Previously, the 66 Chicago route, which is our top ridership route in our entire system, it would stop at Pulaski for overnight service. We are extending about 2.5 miles to complete the entire length of Chicago Avenue and have Chicago Avenue owl service end at Austin. That will provide some much needed service for third shift workers or people that need to come home or make travel later in the evening. Last 3 changes that are also coming, we have multiple span changes as well. So span changes is just extending the hours of our service. When we look at span changes, we like to look at what is the productivity of the service and what is especially the productivity of the last hour. And so what we look at is for the number 18, the number 147, and the number 157, we look at of all 127, 28 routes, how many what is that overall productivity? And these do rank in the top of our productivity rate, especially with them even ending around 7:45 or 9 o'clock. So for the number 18, we are extending that to 10:30 p.m. We think that this is really important, especially for Saturday and Sunday service that did end at 7:45 for this corridor along 16th and 18th Street that has really seen a boon in late night activity and for that community as well. The 147 right now does end at 10:30. We've heard some feedback from individuals who work in Streeterville, especially around the hospitals in Streeterville, that it is hard for them to get home in the evening with ending at 10:30. And so we are extending this to 11:30. Also, just weird things that exist. The 146 and 147 also run on Outer DuSable Lakeshore Drive, and they both end at 11:30, and this ends at 10:30. So there's also just a general need to align with our standard of service along Outer DuSable Lakeshore Drive. And then the last one is the 157 Streeterville Taylor. It ends at 7:15, which for all of us, as we know, even 7:15 when you're working downtown and trying to get home, that's pretty early. And so what we are looking to do with the 157 Streeterville Taylor is extend that to 9:30 on weekdays. This service does not currently operate on the weekends, but something that we have heard from board members is looking at how we can continue to sort of grow that 157 route, especially given the communities that it does serve, and thinking through how we can expand that. And I think one of the areas that we'll consider for 2026 and beyond is looking at potentially weekend service for that route, but that is not what we are doing today. We are just seeking an extension and span of service. So that was all of the service changes that we are making, and while happy to take questions on the 2 items that you all are voting on, the 53 and the 93, or any other questions you have, I do want to show a map of all of the service changes because I think that that is really important to show just the expansiveness of how we've been thinking about improving service across the system and how all the various communities that will be benefiting from these service changes. Director Ortiz?
Yeah, thank you, and Elsa, for all of this work. This is just an incredible amount of thoughtfulness and really understanding our system. I know our system has always been traditionally very centered, and we've heard and seen a lot of requests making sure that we're almost creating a much broader loop around our city and connecting our north, south, east, west areas. So I really want to congratulate the team on thinking through all of this and really thinking across specifics on even drop-off and pickups, and where does it run and where does it connect to the broader spectrum of where and how we're helping connect people. So I hear rides, but when I hear rides, I actually hear people. So I'm really excited to serve the people that are in these areas and helping their lives be much more, have an increased quality of life because of our service.
Thank you, Director Ortiz. And I should say a thank you to you, because actually when I first took this job about a year ago, a little over a year ago, you had said to me, look at making a better connection on the west side. You had talked about connecting Blue Line to Orange Line and how we can think about that. So I do want to say thank you to you, because that's something that is always stuck in the back of my head at where we can improve service. And then you also allowed me, I do want to thank the individuals on my team who have been instrumental in making this happen. Demetrius Nurez, the senior manager for service planning, Amanda Madrigal, who is a service planner with us, and Trevor Purdy, a service planner. They've been working tirelessly for years to make this a reality.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Anyone else? Or?
We'll take questions from anyone else on the board. Director Kale?
Sure. So first of all, congrats on this. I'm really pleased not only by what you're doing, but how you're doing it, and this conversation you had with the college, the unions, etc. That is the right way to do it, and appreciate the amount of time that you're putting into that. Connected also with the partnership theme that our acting president mentioned last time we met as one of the priorities for the next few months. A couple questions. One is, when you mentioned the cost, is that the net cost once you add the additional revenue that we're going to receive, or that's just the cost of the?
It's just operating cost. So we're just looking at operating costs. It does include with the 53A truncation. So we do remove some operations on the 53. So it is a net of operational costs, but it is not with the 2,000 additional rides, what revenue we may get from that. So I know where you're going. To your point, this actually probably becomes something that it's not going to be cost neutral, but definitely is not going to cost as much with the additional rides.
Yeah, I would encourage for the next round of these that you also include what is the additional revenue. So we show that actually this makes not only sense from an equity perspective, but also from a business perspective.
Yep.
And then I also appreciate the map, and I wanted to stop and talk about how in the midst of the narrative that exists right now around potential cuts, etc., how important it is that we demonstrate that we are not doing that, and actually we are improving, adding, offering more this year. I've seen maps circulating out there that are incorrect and disinformation. So I think it's very important that we get these informations out there through our channels and all the ways possible to counteract any confusions. And even the way you refer to these as service changes, I worry that may be understood as, oh, here come the cuts. So I encourage you to call them improvements or whatever you want to make sure that we are actually sending a message that we are not making any cuts this year. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Yeah, Director, just to add on to that, I think this is going to be a theme throughout our meeting today, is kind of discussing the current legislative situation and what that means for us and what it doesn't. But what you see here by what's being presented in this committee is the first indication our 2025 service plan remains in place. So discussions around cuts and potential impacts are all about 2026. We're delivering our commitments to our riders that are in our 2025 budget and which has been approved. And this is evidence of it right here.
Any other questions for any other directors?
A quick comment that I'm excited always to see extended bus routes, especially on weekends, but we all know we're out on weekends as well. So very encouraged by this, and thanks for all the hard work.
Thank you.
Director Ortiz, there are no further comments or questions.
Thank you. I have a motion to place these ordinances for the 53 and 53, 53A and 93 routes on the omnibus for board approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the ordinance be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ricao?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Since there is no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Rakeo, seconded by Director Lee, that the omnibus be approved for board approval. We will take a roll call vote. Director Rakeo,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Motion to approve the omnibus passes yes. Next, since there's no further business to conduct, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo, that the Strategic Planning and Service Delivery Committee meeting be adjourned. We will take a roll call vote. Director Rakeo,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Georgette, would you please call the roll?
Director Rakeo,
Present.
Director Ortiz,
Here.
Chairman Barclay, Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Lee, Director Eady,
Here.
Director Jakes, you do have a quorum. I will note for the record that Director Nima Jha is absent.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of May 14th, 2025. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo, that the committee meeting minutes from May 14th, 2025 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady,
Yeah.
Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Rakeo.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Next order of business is the finance report. Tom McComb.
Morning, Chairman, Directors.
Morning.
All right, a moment here to pull up the report, and then I'm going to take you through the actuals for April, and then we've got a couple of other items on the agenda. Screen. So we're going to start with the monthly results here for April, starting with system generated revenues. So on the top half, you'll see here fair and pass revenues coming in slightly under budget for the month. So a little bit softer in the month of April than we had anticipated, also versus the prior year as well. We have had a chance to take a look at some of the preliminary May revenues. So we do think there is a bit of timing here as those May revenues do have improved over these April results, but we'll have more to come on that next month. On the bottom half here, non-fare box revenue continues to be positive to budget and to last year. That's directly as a result of that additional investment income that we're earning this year due to additional balances on hand, along with the maintained higher rates of interest that we're seeing as well. So overall revenue total for the month, just slightly under budget. We roll that into the year to date. You can see those two trends playing forward here. So a little bit under on total fare and pass revenue for the year, ahead of where we intended to be on the non-fare box side. So total 2.9 million positive to budget for the year, 7.5 million better than where we were last year on the system generated revenue side. On the expenses side, you can see here the monthly results. I'll focus on the one item there that's got negative variance. That's the labor category. So we're kind of at the where we anticipated in terms of the amount of workforce that we want to have on hand. We have seen slightly higher expenses in some of the fringe rate, and so we're incorporating those here. You can see that it is less than 1% in total, and it's more than offset by some of these other categories as well. So we're keeping an eye on it. We're not too worried about it in total on the expenses side of things. The other line item I'll note, just it's the board has focused on this item, which is the security services line that continues to be positive to budget. So we've had a couple months of that positive variance here. So we'll put that in the bank moving forward here as some of those additional contracts come into place. We may see some additional expenses in the second half of the year. So you can see here year to date, like I said, labor is within a fraction of its total budgeted amount, more than offset by those other categories of material, fuel, and power, which we do anticipate seeing continued positive variances in those categories, along with other expenses as well. So total year to date, operating expenses, 20 million positive to budget. On the public funding side of things, here's our monthly results. So most recent results we have are from February for our sales tax collections. You can see there that they're between 5 and 10% positive to budget for the month. That is also matched by those PTF funds as well, which also have that positive variance. We do anticipate that positive variance is going to continue throughout the year. We are looking to get some estimates from the RTA about sort of what level that's going to be at. But good news on some of the structural changes there that are going to deliver that positive additional public funding through the rest of this year. Again, assuming economic conditions remain as they are. So year to date here, you can see we're 23.7 million favorable to budget, which again is a result of that improved sales tax returns coming in better than budget. On the commodities side, no change. So we do have the RFP out for the power purchase. So that's one that we're looking forward to getting those bids in and locking in that power price, hopefully in the month of July, in which case we'll update this with that price and have price certainty at least going into 2026 around our power purchase. That concludes my report. I'm open for any questions.
I have no questions, Tom. Thank you.
We'll take questions from other members of the board. Director Raquel?
No question.
Director Ortiz?
No question.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Lee?
No question, thank you.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions. You may now proceed to agenda item number 4.
Agenda item 4 is the report of our independent auditor. This is the 2024.
Thank you. I would like to invite up to the desk here our independent auditors. So we have Crow and Adelphia, who've conducted our annual audit. So let me slide over one. Other. We'll let them introduce themselves and then take you through the results of our 2024 audit.
Right. Thank you, Tom. Good morning, directors. I am Christine Torres, partner at Crow, and I am here with Anna Austin, partner from Adelphia, our DBE subcontractor, as well as our senior manager on the account, Hollis Hansen Pollock. And we are here to talk about our completed audit of the CTA's financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2024. We were engaged to audit the financial statements to determine that they were reasonably stated in all material respects, as well as to audit the federal grant funds in accordance with guidelines as they're set by the federal government for compliance with laws, regulations, statutes, and the different grant agreements. In regards to the financial statements, we have completed the audit and issued our auditor's opinion, which was unmodified or clean, that notes that all of the amounts presented in the financial statements are materially correct with all of our testing. We cover both the financial statements and the notes to the financial statements during that. And as required by government auditing standards due to your single audit, we also look at the internal controls over reporting and test those to make sure that they are working as they should be. We do not have any findings to report under government auditing standards. And I'm going to have Anna present the update on the federal part of the audit.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Ausan. I'm partner with Adelphia and representing the DBE subcontractor for this audit engagement. I'm happy to report that Crow was able to issue an unmodified opinion on compliance over federal programs for the year ended December 31st, 2024. So CTA receives a number of federal grant programs. However, due to the federal guidelines, we focused our testing on 2 major programs this year. So these programs were the federal transit cluster and the transportation, infrastructure, finance, and innovation act program. So due to the size of these programs, we were able to obtain 99% coverage for the federal expenditure spent because the federal transit cluster is like the largest federal program that CTA expends from. And also as part of the audit process, we evaluated the internal controls over compliance for those programs. And based on the results of our testing, I'm happy to report that we do not have any findings to report. So,
yeah,
Christine?
Thank you. So that is a summary of both our financial and federal audit for the fiscal year. I'd like to thank everybody in the finance department for working with us in a very professional manner and providing us with all the information required as we go through the audit process and ask a lot of information and a lot of questions to issue these audit opinions. And at this point, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take those.
I wouldn't dare ask a question on a clean audit.
We'll take questions from other members of the board.
Question.
Director Lee, Chairman Barclay.
I just want to commend our team as well, to you guys and your team for the hard work. I know we've met several times leading up to this, to get to this point. But, you know, this is good news and we're just pleased. So I want to commend our team for the hard work that they do. Thank you very much.
Director Ortiz.
I echo the sentiments just there. Thank you.
Director Akejo.
No question. Thanks.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
So if you may, can I just call out a few members of the team to thank them? So you can put a few faces.
Absolutely.
Some of the team members. So we have in the back, Sharon, Emily, and Mirka. So if you guys could just raise your hands. And that's our accounting team. So they work directly with the auditors.
Can't see.
Stand up, please.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you.
Sharon, Emily, and Mirka. Thank you. They're going to give me a hard time about that. And then, of course, we're supported, as always, by our internal auditor, right? Working throughout the year to make sure that things are addressed throughout the year so that we do have this clean audit at the end as well. So thanks to Andrew and his internal audit team as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. So clean is good. Let's go to agenda item number 5. It's the review of an ordinance amending ordinance 024-143, approving the fiscal years 2025 through 2029 capital improvement program. Tom.
Okay, thank you. This ordinance amends our current 5-year capital plan, or our CIP, to incorporate CTA's full share of the regional fiscal year 2025 formula section funds that are due to the CTA. The net increase to the 2025 plan is $3.35 million. This is the final true up of the fiscal year 2025 FTA formula budget that now totals $444.4 million. The timing of this CIP amendment is critical so that we can submit the grant application by mid-June to complete all FTA reviews and execute the grant prior to the fiscal year closing in mid-September. The FTA grant agreement in total provides for the purchase and overhaul of bus and rail revenue fleet, purchase of non-revenue fleet vehicles, continued funding for the All Stations Accessibility Program, station improvements, refresh and renew facilities initiative, phase replacement of security camera systems, and meeting the capital financing obligations. With this amendment, the total value of our 5-year CIP will be $6.986 billion. Upon approval, this will be submitted to the RTA for inclusion in the regional capital plan. I'm open for any questions.
No, I have no questions, Tom.
Director Akeo.
No questions.
Director Ortiz. Chairman Barclay.
No question.
Director Lee. Director Eady.
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no questions.
I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Akeo. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Akeo.
Yes.
Motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 6.
Agenda item 6 is the review of an ordinance authorizing a first amendment to a license agreement with PACE for the use of parking spaces at the Rosemont parking lot for PACE Van Go Vehicle Program. Tom.
Thank you. My final item. 2023, the CTA board authorized an agreement with PACE for the use of 2 parking spaces at CTA's Rosemont Park and Ride for PACE's Van Go pilot program. This program allows registered users to access a designated Van Go vehicle to complete their trip and is a valuable first mile, last mile connection. All of the users at this location get on or off the blue line at Rosemont. This location has seen an increase in demand and PACE has requested the use of 2 additional spaces for additional Van Go vehicles. This agreement will provide those 2 spaces at no cost. This agreement is subject to an annual renewal. Let me know if you have any.
No questions, Tom.
Director Akeo.
No questions.
Director Ortiz.
Questions? Thank you.
Chairman Barclay.
No question.
Director Lee.
This is questioned previously, but do we know if these vehicles are accessible for wheelchair users or are they just standard vehicles?
I will get back to you on the exact make and type, not only of the 2 that are there, but of the 2 additional ones that are there.
Not, we should probably consider, suggestion. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Director Eady.
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ricao, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ricao.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Lee. Yes. Director Eady.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may proceed to agenda item number 7.
Agenda item 7 is the review of an ordinance authorizing payment of relocation expenses arising from the acquisition of property located at 119th and Cottage Grove. The exact address is 11900 for the Red Line Extension Project. Bill Mooney.
Morning, directors.
Morning.
Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. Staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing the payment of relocation expenses related to the acquisition of property located at 11900 South Cottage Grove. In October of 2022, Transit Board under Ordinance 022-118 authorized the acquisition of certain parcels in support of the Red Line Extension Project, including the property at 11900 South Cottage Grove. CTA has acquired the parcel and has confirmed relocation expenses owed to the owner pursuant to the Uniform Relocation Act in the sum of $5,573,470. Pursuant to the ordinance, the Chief Infrastructure Officer, with the approval of the General Counsel, has been authorized to pay relocation expenses up to $100,000 to any owner or tenant of a designated parcel without prior board approval. Board approval is required for expenses in excess of $100,000. All costs associated with this expense have been accounted for within the existing project budget. I'm happy to take any questions on this item.
No questions, Bill. Thank you.
We'll take questions from other members of the board. Director Eady.
No question.
Director Lee.
No question.
Chairman Barclay.
No question.
Director Ortiz. Director Ricao.
I have a question, but I wonder if it's best that I ask at the end when all these real estate transactions are completed.
We got a couple here, so.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ricao, that this be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz. Director Ricao. Director Jakes, the motion passes. You may now proceed to agenda item number 8.
Agenda item 8 is the review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 411-413 West 105th Street, Chicago for the RLE project. Bill.
Thank you. Staff recommends approval of an ordinance to authorize the purchase of real property located at 411-413 West 105th Street. In October of 2022, under Ordinance 022-118, the Transit Board authorized the acquisition of certain parcels in support of RLE and the payment of required applicable relocation expenses, including the property mentioned. Pursuant to the ordinance, the Chief Infrastructure Officer, with the approval of General Counsel, has been authorized to acquire properties with a purchase price of up to $1 million and pay for relocation expenses under $100,000 without additional board approval. A separate board approval is required if the costs exceed those values. Staff has negotiated a purchase price for the subject property of $1,175,000 and has determined that the owner is owed up to and not to exceed $580,000 in relocation expenses, requiring additional board approvals. All costs associated with this acquisition are within the existing project budget. I'll be happy to take any questions on this item.
No questions, Bill.
Director Ricao. Director Ortiz. Chairman Barclay.
Question.
Director Lee. Director Eady.
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
Now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ricao, that this be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Ricao.
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes. You may now proceed to agenda item number 9.
Agenda item 9 is the review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 12200-12256 South Cottage Grove Avenue for RLE project. Bill.
Staff recommends approval of an ordinance to authorize the purchase of real property located at 12200 to 12256 South Cottage Grove under the prior authority of Ordinance 022-118, authorized by the Transit Board in October of 22. Pursuant to the ordinance, Chief Infrastructure Officer with the approval of General Counsel has been authorized to acquire properties with a purchase price of up to $1 million. Has negotiated a purchase price for subject property of $5,600,000, which requires additional board approval. Costs with this acquisition have been accounted for within the existing project budget. Happy to take any questions on this item.
Questions, Bill?
Director Rakeo,
No questions.
Director Ortiz,
No question.
Chairman Barclay, Director Lee,
None.
Director Eady,
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Rakeo.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 10.
Agenda item 10 is the review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 401-407 West 104th Street for the RLE project. Bill, your copy.
I am. I got a whole lot today. So staff recommends approval of an ordinance to authorize the purchase of real property located at 401 to 407 West 104th Street, which was previously authorized under ordinance 022-18 for acquisition. Pursuant to the ordinance, the Chief Infrastructure Officer has approval to acquire properties that do not exceed $1 million. Staff has negotiated a purchase price for the subject property of $1,400,000, requiring additional board approval. The owner will maintain a post-possession agreement until June 1st, 2026, and will indemnify the CTA during this period. All costs associated with this acquisition are within the existing project budget.
No questions.
Director Rakeo,
Questions.
Director Ortiz,
No questions.
Chairman Barclay,
But
Director Lee,
None.
Director Eady,
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo, that this be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
yes,
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Rakeo.
Yes.
Motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 11.
Agenda item 11 is the review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, the RLE project. Bill,
Thank you, Director. This is my last RLE item for you today.
we're going to miss you.
I've got one more, so don't kick me off Thursday. Yep. Staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago in support of the Red Line Extension project. The establishment of the proposed alignment and associated record of decision, CTA was obligated to make commitments as part of the federal NEPA process to maintain access between MWRD properties that are on the east and west side of the alignment. Separately, acquisition and access to MWRD property was identified as being necessary to facilitate the construction and operations of the extension. These costs were budgeted for as part of the project budget at that time. The proposed IGA provides for the acquisition of the fee property to CTA with a reserved easement for MWRD, a temporary easement to MWRD property required for construction, permanent perpetual easement from MWRD to CTA for access to the Kensington Marsh, and a permanent perpetual easement from CTA to MWRD for access to the relocated access road. Costs associated with this acquisition is $4,490,000. Separately, the IGA calls for the CTA to reimburse MWRD for an agreed upon portion of the cost to construct a new pumping station and pipeline connection between MWRD's Calumet Water Reclamation Plant East and West campuses, to relocate an existing gatehouse at the east entrance to MWRD's Calumet plant, and reinstalling new permanent site security fencing along the perimeter of the property impacted by our taking. The not to exceed value of the reimbursements for these mitigations is $45,510,000. Be eligible for reimbursement, all costs must have occurred and been submitted prior to December 1st, 2029. Separately, MWRD and CTA will provide reciprocal indemnification for their various operations and construction projects as they occur. Happy to take any questions on this item.
I have no questions, Bill.
Director Eady,
No question.
Director Lee,
No questions.
Chairman Barclay, Director Ortiz, Director Rakeo.
Yeah, I'm going to stop here now because we have, we're about to approve six very sizable transactions over $60 million in real estate. And I wanted to hear you, Bill, how this process is going. What are we learning about the real estate acquisition? What can we tell the community around these transactions, the overall picture, and the pace of the project. And I wanted to preface that by saying that I'm really pleased to see that this red line extension project is moving forward and getting phase after phase and getting us to a place where we can start celebrating, some important milestones. But I wanted to, again, stop here because this is an important moment. Number of transactions, and as it relates, again, to the purchase of real estate, what are we learning? How is that going? Are we meeting budget? Are we exceeding? Are we under? And how will you tell the community the progress that we're making here?
Absolutely, Director. So I have a reference the 022-118 ordinance, and that ordinance we passed in 2022 to authorize staff to start the acquisitions for the project, and identified just over 200 parcels taken. In the end, with the refinement of design as we've gone forward, we've been able to reduce that impact to about 193 total parcels, of which, with the approval of these ordinances, we are pretty much entirely bought out. There's one parcel that we have kind of a you will likely not see. It's below the authorization that we're finalizing the agreement to, and that unlocks a phase of contingency in this project. And so that's a pretty huge milestone. And when you think about the brother sister projects of RPM and RLE, RPM was a dozen parcels in taking. This is over 200 in range, right? So we saw this as a huge risk to the project, and as part of the federal process was identified in the risk registry, and there was required a contingency that was tied to the project overall budget that was tied to this. So being able to reach this milestone on the contingency curve unlocks the availability of some of that contingency for other things, and being able to do that. We've been able to maintain the budget overall for both acquisitions and relocations. Relocations become a little more variable because they get into exact items a person owns, and until you really get into that acquisition process, it's harder to refine that. We can take typical budget line items to like, oh, it's a single family home. This is typically what it costs to relocate. One of the biggest challenges we entered into when we looked at this is generational wealth for any family mostly comes through ownership of real estate. It's really common, especially in Chicago. And so in an underserved community such as the one that we're looking to create opportunity for with RLE, not hurting the generational wealth of a family here was really important. That becomes challenging because of the rules that come with acquisitions and how property value is appraised. So we had to be very thoughtful in how we acquired properties, how we worked with the owners of those properties. In some cases, we had to even end up in an eminent domain court to get favorable rulings to clear title and lease of things so that we could move forward, so the property owners weren't harmed by those rules. And I would broadly say is the success of acquisition has been that fact that even though we may have agreed upon rulings and settlement in an eminent domain proceeding, we have not had to take anything by force. And while we may have postured in a position, some of these parcels you're seeing lagging because they were parcels that had lawyers that were more aggressive. They were business entities. And so we ended up in a path of eminent domain that kept the negotiations going and supportive in there. We have not had to get a ruling that required us to take property. You've often heard me talk about my experience 20 plus years ago on the Brown Line expansion project and the lessons learned I still hold from that. And we took a lot of property by eminent domain there. It was a very contentious property taking and still reflects in my mind around those things. So I think our success has been that we've been able to favorably negotiate. We've been able to stay within budget. We've been able to deal with the community responsibly and respectfully in here and come to the end of a process. That's a huge one. I mean, this was a huge milestone for us. So
yeah.
Great to hear. And so, and you mentioned how many more of these parcels are to be purchased?
I don't expect you to see any more parcels at board. There is one parcel we are finalizing. We have an agreement on that we just need to finalize the signatures on. There's a couple of pieces of transaction that we've had to work around to be able to make it work for everybody. But that one should be under the values. And so, but we are there. So
we're about to celebrate a milestone here, closing that real estate transactions.
Assuming the support of the board goes through, we will. Yeah, it will be. We are anxiously waiting to be able to report this to the federal government that we've met this whole point on the curve. So,
great. Thanks.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
Great question, Director.
Thank you.
Good question. I was thinking that. No, I wasn't. May I now have leave the places item on the omnibus for board approval?
So
Second.
it's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director James?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Rakeo?
Yes.
The motion passes. Director James, you may now move to agenda item number 12.
Agenda item 12 is the review of an ordinance declaring surplus and authorizing the sale of real property located at 5426-5446 South Calumet Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, to City Colleges of Chicago. Welcome back, Bill.
Thank you, sir. This is my last item for you this morning. So staff recommends approval of an ordinance declaring surplus and authorizing the sale of CTA-owned property located at 5426 to 5446 South Calumet Avenue, adjacent to the CTA's Garfield Green Line Station. The property is no longer necessary for transit operations and has been identified as an ideal location for the new Malcolm X College Learning Center by the City Colleges of Chicago. The property is approximately 38,768 square feet and has an appraised value of $370,000. CTA and City Colleges have agreed to the sale of the property for the value of $370,000, which will be distributed through a class participation agreement, which must be executed prior to the closing of the property. Class participation agreement will call out the terms for allowing CTA employees access to enroll and earn college education credits offered through the City Colleges. Finally, City Colleges has also agreed to indemnify, defend, and hold harmless the authority with the sale of this property. I'm glad to answer any questions on this item.
No, that's good. That's good. No questions, Bill.
Director Eady?
Question.
Director Lee? Chairman Barclay?
Just a comment, I'm pleased to see us moving forward on that 55th Street parcel. We've been holding on that for a long time. But more importantly, I'm glad to see that we're working with sister agencies on transit-oriented development projects like this. I think this is going to enhance the community, and it's also going to provide an anchor for our riders as well, too.
I agree with you, sir.
Director Ortiz?
I share the same comments again. Thank you.
Director Rakeo?
Congratulations. I also wanted to highlight the importance of those partnerships that the chairman has mentioned, and also the fact that this particular station has been for over 8 years an ETOD site that CMAP, RTA have invested in planning around with community partners. And now we're seeing the results of what happens when you really work with community to make sure that the development around certain train stations makes sense from the perspective of equity. And so congrats on that. Congrats on the creative agreement between CTA and City Colleges and receiving those credits for our workers. And then just will you provide a quick update on the adjacent parcels and what could happen with those two? Because Colleges is great to have there, but we have other needs in that community
Absolutely.
to address.
So we've had, as you've mentioned, we've had ongoing relationships in this area about how we would look to develop the property in this sport. We have what I'll call the east parcel that we're under consideration for today. We have two parcels on the west side. One is the underdeveloped frontage right on the corner. That parcel is in an active procurement cycle right now out for RFP in line with support of the goals of the ETOD ordinance. And so I can't comment much more deeper than that at this point. Ellen will come running up there. So, then there is our park and ride lot, which is recessed kind of from the frontage there. That is a fairly large parcel that was developed around the midpoint of the Green Line renovations, post kind of full renovation, pre-Garfield renovation, as a way to try and help draw some attention to that station and open it. It is an underutilized asset that we have been having ongoing conversations about, and the goal ultimately is, as we start to support greater development in this area, it would potentially be another site that could support affordable housing in the community. It fits in the footprint there. The city owns some additional property around there that they would look to support. They've had some proactive conversations with the alder about how to be advanced on zoning and kind of a more global thought plan about how to support development in that area. So that one kind of tails on the backside of those first two. There is a kind of longer plan of strategy about how we phase in some development to support. It's an amazing gateway station. So I think we certainly see the benefit to bringing commuters to that community and supporting it. You mentioned the development kind of broadly on the south side of 63rd there. Theaster Gates owns a bunch of property, has been really instrumental in supporting it. There's a great restaurant there, Peaches have an opportunity to go visit it. We did a partnership with the University of Chicago. And one of the first things we did there, right, where we actually lease out the old retail concession space that we renovated as part of the project and made it available for community use. They do kind of a rotating artist kind of pop-up station there. And so you often, if you go in there, you can get jewelry or other kind of development makes from self incubating businesses, which is pretty interesting there. And then they also have some underrail activation space behind there that they use for rotating events and art exhibits and stuff. So I think there's a whole lot going on there that's really exciting. And I think it's exciting for us to be able to be a part of it and support it. So
Yes, there's a whole lot going on at that station and around other stations. And so my takeaways is one agreement today with City Colleges, 2 more parcel sites in the pipeline for that station. And then this being one of the potential sites for a larger ETOD agenda for CTA.
yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Questions?
I now have leave the places item on the omnibus for board approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Raquel. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 13.
Agenda item 13 is the review of an ordinance authorizing intergovernmental license agreement for CTA's use of Metra's bathroom facilities at 504 East 115th Street in Chicago for the Frequent Network Project. Holly.
Morning, Director. Oh, no. 1 second. There we go. Good afternoon, or good morning still, I guess. CTA is seeking board approval of a cost sharing and use agreement between the CTA and Metra. With CTA's frequent bus network, more service on the number 4 Cottage Grove will be extended to 115th at Kensington, reaching the Metra station at that location. Typically what happens on the number 4 Cottage Grove is we short turn is what the term is called, where you basically don't serve the entire extent of the route. You short turn at 95th and head back north. But with the frequent bus network, we are serving the entire route with 10 minutes or better service. And so based on this additional service, it does necessitate the need for bathroom access at the Metra station for CTA bus operators, both on the number 4, and there also will be opportunity for operators of the 111A to utilize the bathroom as well. It is estimated that up to 100 operators a day will utilize this restroom, just based on the level of service that we have on those 2 routes. So this is a cost sharing and use agreement that we have covering the cost of supplies, cleaning, and maintenance, which will all be provided by Metra. And so the cost is up to $10,000 for a year, paid in 2 installments, the first $5,000. And then as we continue to go through this program, we'll assess the cost and then determine if we are adequately covering the cost of Metra's work to maintain and supply this back. Any questions?
No.
We'll take questions from other members of the board. Director Raquel.
No questions.
Director Ortiz. Chairman Barclay.
Just a comment. This is a common sense makes, which we should be doing, working with other agencies to working together. This is what they want to see in Springfield, and this is a good example of just working together. Thank you.
Director Lee.
Glad that we're prioritizing our bus operators and their access to bathroom needs. So appreciate this. Thank you.
Director Eady.
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
I now have leave the places item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Raquel. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 14.
Agenda item 14 is the review of an ordinance authorizing a pilot program agreement with Sensonic US Incorporated for a safety pilot through the CTA Innovation Studio Program. Molly.
Apologize, Director. Vita, it was the wrong deck that's loaded. Get in there. I apologize, Director.
need the deck to start the report?
No, it's an old one, which is fine. We'll go with this. It has all the right information. There's just a couple additional pieces of information I was going to add. It is not the end of the world. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I feel you, bro.
Right.
Okay. You needed that today.
That was the dog.
It was you, Director. I thought it was you coming at me.
I didn't get my morning Dunkin' Donuts sandwich.
Today we are here. I'm, as a reminder, Chief Planning and Innovation Officer Molly Poppy. I'm joined by Kara Bader, the Vice President of Planning and Strategy, or Innovation and Strategy, excuse me. I gave you a different title. So we're here to present on specifically a safety pilot that we are seeking approval on. As a reminder, this safety pilot is part of our Innovation Studio program, which was launched back in late 23, early 24. The goal of Innovation Studio is we put out problem statements to the private sector, to the public, and say, here's some of the challenges that we're having. Please help us pilot different solutions in kind of a lab type environment where we can compare and contrast different types of solutions, and we can see how the sort of changing technology ecosystem, or even sort of hardware, hard tech solutions can also help to solve some of our biggest challenges. So here on the list, you have all of the problem statements that we put out for 24, and we have various pilots throughout. We've got a couple pilots in customer experience that we anticipate launching in July. We also have a prior pilot that we sought approval from the board on a few months ago, which was a camera-based right-of-way intrusion project. We have a no-cost pilot that we're leveraging, utilizing cameras on our buses to check bus stop conditions. And specifically what we are here today is for a pilot, another pilot around right-of-way intrusion and the concerns with a technology solution to address right-of-way intrusions. So specifically, right-of-way intrusions continue to be a challenge the agency works to address. As you guys may have seen in the paper, we had a recent right-of-way intrusion on the red line service yesterday. And so this is something that has both a human impact for our riders, it has a human impact for our operators as well, and it has a real world service impact on how we deliver service. So we are seeking board approval today for Sensonic. Sensonic will launch a technology approach leveraging our existing fiber optic cable to detect right-of-way intrusion for CTA. The total cost of the pilot is $110,000. This is an up to amount. The payment will be split into 2 milestones, so where the full value will not be realized until the pilot is successfully running and complete. This particular pilot is different than other pilots that we have. A lot of the other pilots that we have are camera-based, and that camera-based technology can only detect right-of-way intrusions within their field of vision of the camera. So it can only see the camera at the station and potential right-of-way intrusions there. It cannot extend beyond sort of what it can see and beyond typically into the subway or along a track where there isn't a station. And so this is really unique because it is a sensor technology on our fiber optic cable. The Sensonic has tested it up to 50 miles on more freight rail type solution. And so this is their attempt and work to try to pilot something on a public transit system. We will be detecting over about 3 miles of total track for right-of-way intrusion. So there'll be a sensor on the fiber optic cable that runs along the right-of-way. It will connect to an edge device that is powered by the computer vision technology developed by Sensonic, specifically designed to detect vibrations on a fiber optic cable and be able to distinguish the difference between a train that's going down the tracks and somebody walking on the tracks or something moving on the tracks. So it's a really sort of complex model that they've developed and that they will pilot for us. Just a little bit about the hardware some more and the pilot timeline. So there is software components that I've mentioned, plus there will be an edge device that we will utilize and a sensor. The overall initial training and calibration and installation will take about 6 weeks. From there, we'll have 8 weeks of additional sort of fine tuning, calibration, and then we will have about 14 weeks working with our control center to manage for false positive, tracking the results of this particular technology. I do want to note very quickly, because we've talked about this as a board, as this is a priority for you all to work on right-of-way intrusion, and we've passed the prior program of STV and DIRC, which is the AI detection technology. We have other different types of technology that we are working and testing as well. There is utilizing our existing camera-based system that we're testing right-of-way intrusions. And then we have a third system that is deployed on the yellow line. It's a little bit more focused on employee safety, right? When our infrastructure team is working on the right-of-way, making sure that there are safety measures and there's detection of them on the right-of-way to prevent any accidents there. So this is kind of the full gambit of what we've looking at from a technology perspective to try to address right-of-way intrusions. What we do know from what else is out there in the world, we know NTA has about 5 different pilots that they're running right now for right-of-way intrusion. So they're also looking at AI-based technology and other technology as well. And then they do have some hardware components as well. They are looking at platform doors. Those would be very specific doors that you would install that would require precision berthing of our trains and require that to all be synced up so that then the doors open as a train pulls into the station and correctly matches up with the doors of the train. Just for sort of context, that's about $100 million of what we see for those 3 stations for a platform door pilot. And then from an AI-based technology type of solution, Metrolink, our partners up are they in Vancouver? Where are they? Vancouver. Up in Canada, they also have an AI-based intrusion technology. They're doing 1.5 miles of track for a cost of $1.3 million for their AI-based technology. So we sort of see what's out in the world. There's the platform-based technologies, and then there's this camera-based technologies and sensor-based technologies. So we're looking at sort of the difference between camera and platform-based technologies. And then we do continue, camera-based and sensor-based. And then we do continue to look at those physical solutions, knowing that those are very expensive and very complex to implement. But that is something that we are looking at the full gambit of how we can try to detect right-of-way intrusions. The last piece before I take questions is just how we're measuring success. We have metrics for success for all of our pilots that we've been working on across the departments that you see here. And what this is about is looking at the different types of technology, being able to compare and contrast them, looking at response time, uptime, most importantly, false positive rates. What we don't want to have happen is you detect a person, but that person's actually boarding the train, and then an alert goes off, and you hold the service. That's not what we want. So we are testing all of these different metrics for these pilots to ensure that what we ultimately look to leverage across the system is useful and does take into consideration sort of the various different environments that we have at CTA. With that, I will take any questions. Dr. Jakes?
If no one purposefully or accidentally falls on the tracks, even out of view of the cameras, how do you measure the success of it?
So one of the things that we do to train the model is there will be some interaction with us training it by us entering the right of way or coming close, because there's both a sensor of directly entering the right of way or getting very close to it as well, right? There's also the situations where people get too close to the tactile or too close to the train. So that's something that we will look at as well. So there'll be some controlled environment. Train's not going to be running, but there will be some controlled environment where we help train the model, enter the right of way. And so the camera or sensor does detect us as we calibrate the model. And then there will also be detection, not just of somebody directly entering the right of way, but also did somebody get very close to the train, get very close to the tactile? Are we be able to sense them?
And maybe I missed it. What's the response time? It detecting to notify someone?
Yeah, it can be almost immediate notification to control center. From there, control center then does have a camera that they will pull up, verify that there's a right-of-way intrusion, and then radio out. Longer term, as we continue to work through this pilot and continue to work through making sure that we're not seeing those false positives, we would look to, could we make it immediate? Could we do a direct alert at the station to the operator? Could we even get up to cutting power? And so that we can say, we're just going to cut power right away and notify control. But Until we sort of calibrate the model, know for sure it works and know it's not sending us false positives, we notify control and then control communicates with the operator.
And the one thing I would add is the purpose of testing multiple interventions at once is the alert is something we'll be able to control. If you can successfully generate an automated report, whether it's the camera generation, fiber optic cable, how you get that report to the control center and what you do, those are all internal procedures we coordinate regularly. What we haven't been able to do is identify a very high quality automatic sensor. And so we're doing these in real time because what might work best in terms of sending an alert to control and sending a signal to cut power for one pilot could be applied to another pilot. The thing that has been most difficult to dial in with technology, both at CTA and in our peer agencies, is reducing those false positives and trying to sense an intrusion, as quickly as possible. So it isn't necessarily the operator seeing someone on the track, but they've already been radioed. They know to slow down. We can also explore things like wayside lighting, so they would see a light even before they got the radio. It's really the generating the incident that is what we're trying to iterate on and figure out the best and highest quality approach.
Thank you.
Director Rakeo.
Yes, thanks for paying attention to this particular issue. I think all the innovation studio projects are important, but the ones that can save lives are, of course, number one. And because we have several going on different timelines, when do you think we could start assessing impact and hopefully positive impact on the numbers?
Yeah, the system at UIC Halstead, the two that we will be doing for the STV pilot, and then this one that's about 3 miles, those will run pretty concurrently. So those are going to run simultaneously pretty much throughout 2026. So we will be able to know over the next 6 months sort of how they're comparing and contrasting to each other. The yellow line is a longer lead time. So I would say in the next 6 months, I will be able to come back to you along with our partners in IT and operations and infrastructure to say, hey, here's what we're seeing working, and we're going to look to potentially extend it further, knowing that there is still the Yellow Line project going, which has a broader scope. It's that third rail protection. It's got some other things in it as well. So that would continue. But I would say in the next 6 months, 6 to 9 months, we'll be able to come back.
For the one we're approving today?
They're approving today, yep. And then the one that you approved 3 months ago, 2 months ago.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Director Ortiz. Yes, I agree as well. This is particularly important, obviously, to make sure that we're doing our very best to save lives on our end. Obviously, this merits a much longer conversation, I think, within our city, mental health issues and otherwise. I'm wondering if this particular pilot can be enhanced with audio and lights, particularly because as I understand the pilot, it's really just assessing blockage, right, across the distance, but it's not preventing the person or object to actually do anything. And so I think if we can coordinate that notification to also coordinate with some lighting that could go in there, that could be lighter cost, and some audio, as in like you're crossing, a right of way, or warning of sort. I feel like that could also sort of get to the root of the problem before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, we will absolutely take a look to see what else we can, after we've calibrated the model and feel like it's accurate and good, that once we go there, what we could do potentially from an audio announcement, even an audio announcement from control center that somebody's able to say on the platform, you're standing too close to tactile, or get off the right of way, those type of things. We'll look to see how we can expand after we've confirmed that we can detect people on the right way.
And color lighting, maybe, that could be another.
Chairman Barclay.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful suggestion. You can implement that.
Director Lee.
All of my questions have been asked, so thank you.
Director Eady.
Yes, I had posed mine during the briefing, so I'm fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Director.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ricao?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 15.
Agenda item 15 is the review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of primary and excess property insurance coverage for policy year 2025-2026. Sisavon Baker.
Good morning, Directors. Sisavon Baker, Deputy General Counsel from the CTA's Law Department. This is an ordinance authorizing the 2025-2026 property insurance policy. It runs from July to July and is renewed every year. Our insurance broker, Metra Alliant, and its DBE partner Paradigm marketed the renewal to both domestic and international insurance markets. A consortium of the international and domestic insurance providers provided the best combination of coverage and price. This year's premium was $7,031,587. And this year we're looking at a premium of $7,436,605. This is an approximate increase of $400,000 or a 5.76% increase. Increases are based typically on a variety of issues, but this year we've had an increase in our assets values, which went up to 15.36%, from $7.6 billion to $8.8 billion. We recommend renewal with this consortium, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have no questions this far. Thank you.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Lee?
No question.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Ortiz? Director Ricao?
Question.
Director Jakes, there are no questions.
I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ricao, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ricao?
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 16.
Agenda item 16 is the review of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to a contract with CRRC Seafong America JV for rail cars. Kent Ray and Jeff Bora.
Good morning, Directors. Kent Ray, General Counsel. With me is Jeff Bora. Jeff is the Deputy Counsel Corporate. Today, you're seeking the people and ordinance authorizing an amendment to the Chicago Transit Authority's contract with CRRC Seafang America Joint Venture with respect to CRRC's manufacture and delivery of CTA's Series 7000 rail cars. This contract was entered into about 10 years ago and includes a base order of 400 new rail cars and 4 options for additional rail cars totaling 446 on top of the 400 base. Over the course of the past 10 years, through pandemic, supply chain issues, and inflation, CTA has received and continues to receive so far roughly 230 of these cars on the base order. While the option order terms included an escalation in the indices to account for the cost of rail car over time, from the U.S. statistics, those indices were discontinued, leaving the parties to find acceptable replacement escalation indices. What this amendment does is it provides for replacement escalation indices for the options, rail cars. It resets the time for application of those indices to reflect the current production. It permits additional escalation that must be justified up to certain capped amounts. It allocates responsibilities for taxes and duties prospective from 2025. It establishes certainty of performance by strengthening vendor bonding requirements, requiring that the bond, letter of credit, be in a US-based bank, and recognizes significant savings over having to seek new contracts to procure these rail cars. Funding for the option orders will be approved by the board separately prior to production, We anticipate the first option go into production somewhere 2 years out. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, what happens to the old rail cars? I know we talked about this some years ago, but yeah.
The 2600s, I'd have to refer to Mr. Bonds for that question.
Morning, directors.
Morning.
Chief Transit Officer, CTA. What happens to the old rail cars that they get scrapped at some point? We actually sell them off as scrap metal, so we get a profit off of those once we retire those.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question 9.
Take other questions from other members of the board. Director Rakeo.
Yeah, I think we can take advantage of this moment and educate ourselves and the public as to what the cost is of each of those rail cars that we all get into and out of every day. So what is the cost of one of those rail cars today, and what is the potential cost as part of these options and negotiations?
The current cost for the base order rail cars is approximately $1.5 million per rail car. Under this settlement, discounting potential taxes down the road, they are capped at an additional 1.2 roughly on top of that. If we were to go out on the street to buy rail cars today, we had an independent cost estimate done, and it was looking as though we would be paying somewhere in excess of $4.25 million per rail car.
$4.25 million for each of the cars.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, how many cars do we have in the system? Approximately.
Mr. Bonds for that one again. Stay up here, please.
And we have around 1,500 rail cars total in our fleet. 700 are 714 are 5,000 series rail cars. We have between 215 and 230 that have been delivered of the 7,000s. As the 7,000s come on board, we're starting to pull back on the 2,600s. And the rest of that fleet is 3,200s and 2,600s, which are currently operating on blue line and the brown and orange lines.
Thank you. I think that's pretty sobering when we are talking about, funding that we need, et cetera. I think it's important to educate all of us on the cost, and that every time, again, we take one of those cars, we are walking into a $2 million car, every day. So thanks for the context.
Exactly.
And just to build on that, I think in terms of the funding point that you're making, one of the messages I've really been trying to send, certainly people are highly focused on service delivery and the quality of service delivery, as they should be. But what I've been looking to do is break down the reasons that they're seeing service impacted. So when you do look at issues with our aging fleet and issues with our cars and associating that with the funding impact, right? These are not just sort of management operational decisions. These are informed by our aging fleet, our aging infrastructure, very much so. And there's a funding component to that.
Thanks.
So on top of the additional cost that when you look at how much it's going to cost us to go out for new rail cars, you have to also count in the cost that it's costing us to keep the older fleet running, because it's really has gotten to a point that they need to be retired.
Director Ortiz.
Thank you for all that. What's also most impressive is your ability to just throw out those numbers out of nowhere. So
I've been doing this a long time.
appreciate it.
Chairman Barclay.
Is there any risk of solvency in terms of?
No, I suppose there's always risk, but I think this resolution helps assure us of continued performance. This was an important step in having our vendors with its suppliers and subcontractors that they're going to be available and ready to go on these options.
Thank you. Director Lee.
No further questions. Thanks, Ken.
Director Eady.
Yeah, you referenced about the aging equipment. What is maintenance costs that we're experiencing?
I don't have that number in front of me, but I definitely know that it's costing us quite a bit because in the 2600s especially, the 3200s have received some level of overhaul in the last 10 years. 2600s have not seen an overhaul in probably 15 years, which means a lot of the components are needing to be replaced. There's a lot of wiring issues, core issues. All of these are being, really the rail maintenance group do a bang up job trying to keep them going. And so it's costing us quite a bit. Right.
One final point. I did all the talking, but Jeff Bora is the attorney who took the lead on our team in negotiating these great terms. So I do want to thank him for the board.
And Director Eady, to your question and to the point overall, we can calculate that and give a sense of scale. I think it's a great by Mr. Bonds as well about the upkeep and the money that goes into that in addition to the purchase of new cars. And we can build that out.
Thank you.
I still want to hear Jeff say something. I just want to hear him say anything.
Even me too.
Thank you.
That's satisfying.
Yes, thank you very much.
Need to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ricao, that this item will be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ricao?
Yes.
Director James, you may now proceed to agenda item number 17.
Agenda item number 17 is the review of an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with the county of Cook Health and Hospital System to install, operate, and maintain public health vending machines on CTA property, dispensing, am I saying this right? Nalazon. Is that correct?
Nalazon, yes.
At rail stations, Narcan, right?
Correct.
All right. Denise.
Good morning, directors. Denise Barreto, Chief Equity and Engagement Officer. This morning, we are seeking the board's approval for an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with the County of Cook through the County of Cook Health and Hospital System to install, operate, and maintain public health vending machines on CTA property, dispensing naloxone at rail stations, also known as Narcan, is a life-saving medication used to reverse the effects of an opioid overdose. The vending machines will be installed at 5 stations across 4 rail lines. This agreement is the result of the CTA partnership with the Westside Heroin Opioid Task Force, CC, the Cook County Health Systems, and Cook County Department of Public Health, and the Chicago Recovery Alliance. Happy to answer any questions.
I don't have a question, but I do have a brief comment. Because, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Sheila Haneke.
Ms. Haneke?
Yes.
Yeah, you are the epitome of turning pain into purpose, and thank you. Thank you for that. So that's my only comment.
Other comments or questions from the board? Director Ricao?
Yeah, I wanted to double down on that comment and appreciate that last board meeting, Sheila was here, and this board meeting, we are making this happen. And I appreciate the staff taking the lead here, making sure that we focus on these projects, again, that are saving lives, right? And of all the projects, those should be elevated. Today, the theme seems to be partnerships, right? And appreciate Nora's focus on that last time. And so I've been following this both with excitement that we are building all these partnerships, but also concern as to how, what's the overall, I guess, strategy around partners here? How are we staffed to initiate those, follow through, check on those, cultivate, nurture, all these things? Because once you start a partnership, that generates more work, right? That's usually the case. And so if you could just give us some sense, Denise, on how are you all thinking big picture, and also maybe use this as an example of how it was originated, how we arrive here, and what's next, that would be helpful for us.
Sure. So this partnership is the result of a direct request of mine on WBEZ in October of 2023, when folks were pressuring the CTA on, you need to have Narcan on the stations, you need to have your operators carrying it. I specifically said We are not in the healthcare business. We are a transit agency and we move people and we need help with social services. And within a week, the West Side Opioid Task Force called, led by my call out of Representative LaShawn Ford. They called us within a week and that started this. I think the bigger question, that's the origin story. But the bigger thing is, as this started to move, it was very clear because as Director Jakes pointed out last meeting, he asked, is this the same or similar to what was happening in the city with the machine that we have at 95th? And the point of that is that was very much in our minds when we were building this, because that machine did experience, it didn't work at times. It was out of supplies. And so with this partnership with Cook County Department of Public Health, they have a partnership with the Chicago Recovery Alliance. And so we will have full, like the Chicago Recovery Alliance will be the partner that makes sure that it is procured, the Narcan is procured, replenished, and they're also going to provide office hours for us to make sure that there's some human touch and not just a machine being put up. And that is a nod to Acting President Nora Learson, because in her role as Chief of Staff, that was her biggest concern about this project was, are we just putting up a machine? Is this, all we're doing? As far as how to move forward, I think the biggest thing related, at least under my responsibilities of partnerships, collaborations, you build relationships before you need them. So we are always talking to people. We are continuously out in the community. My team, the government community relations liaisons, have been strategically deployed by region. And so they are in contact with all kinds of organizations, other electeds. And I think our vision is that we're building those relationships. And when CTA raises a need for a partner, we will have relationships already in place to make that stuff happen. So I could defer to someone else, but that's the way that within the government and community relations, that's the way we're looking at it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add it, recognizing your question and note, Director, that the focus on partnerships does create a lot of additional engagement that I think we've been feeling over the last couple of months during my time here in this role. And I want to be thoughtful about it because I think it's specific to each area. There's partnerships that are so kind of subject matter specific, as Denise is recognizing on this topic. But overall, it is a cultural approach from across the whole agency. So we're being thoughtful about how to structure that in terms of working that muscle within each group in terms of planning and innovation and what that means for partnerships there versus from a health perspective or a safety perspective, but then also making sure we have the mechanisms in place that people know how to do that in ways that is shared across those areas and to cultivate that further. So we'll keep you updated on that. I think it's very much top down, a focus of mine personally to embed those partnerships. I feel strongly that from the top, those start as well and then flow down to the organization in various ways.
Thanks. And I cannot stress enough how important it is and the evolution from when I started my career here, and CTA was just like this wall where we just move people from A to B. That's all we do. To slowly but steadily building now partnerships that are helpful not only to support people who use our system, but also when we then go out and ask for help, support, funding, etc., is one thing to show up alone and another thing to show up with your friends that are not transactional friends that you use, but friends that you have a deep relationship. So congrats on this partnership, and I look forward to the overall picture. And also, again, still kind of concerned around how do we sustain this effort and staff it properly so we don't start things that we cannot follow through, as was your concern with the initial machine.
And I think I just want to make clear that part of that is having other partners, because we don't, having enough people in GCR to have the relationships so that you can activate other partners, right? Because the ability for us to grow our teams to do all the things we need to do, I mean, we know what our resource constraints are. So this particular situation is a perfect example. As this moves and looking at the timing of this, timing as well as place facing of these machines, the relationships that my team have built in those regions will be able to be activated should there be an issue or should there be so just wanted to emphasize that because you asked specifically about staffing. And I think we have to keep that nuance there, that our staff is our staff, but our staff can then be extended by the relationships that they build and that they maintain always.
Thank you. Questions, Director Ortiz?
I appreciate the partnership.
Chairman Barclay?
Yeah, just congratulations. In this meeting, we've done two things to save lives. And I think that this is what we need to really consider these important issues. And so thank you for all the hard work, Nora, thank you for the leadership on this as well. But this is moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Director Lee?
Thanks for your leadership, Denise. Exciting and excited to see how it's maintained and continually staffed. So thanks.
Director Eady?
Yeah, I'm just curious in terms of the selection of the various lines.
Sure.
What led to that selection?
Awesome question. So first of all, we wanted to look where the heroin highway is, right? A lot of the data that we looked at was related to Chicago public health as well as Cook County public health, the West Side Opioid, Heroin, and Opioid Task Force. Really, they gave us a wish list, Bill. Wasn't it like 9 stations, I think, originally that we started out with, and we went and visited when Nancy Ellen was here on the coldest day, I have to tell you that. But anyway, we went to all those stations and looked at feasibility, but it was really driven by where the activity is, and that is also the way that we're going to deploy the office hours, right? So there's a guarantee of at least 6 to 9 visits a month in the locations of where these machines are. And I'll just read that out loud. It's the blue line, Jefferson Park. The green line, it's the Harlem Oak Park side. Red line, 47th Street in Howard. And the pink line in Central Park.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved. It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ricao. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ricao? Yes. The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 18, which is the review of our purchase and sales award recommendations.
Yeah, I'm gonna go through these. Hopefully they can keep up with me. Our next order of business is the review of contract numbers B1 through B6, which are contract awards for infrastructure. I have no questions.
We'll take questions from other members of the board. Director Ricao?
No question.
Director Ortiz?
Oh.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Lee?
None.
Director Eady?
None.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions. We may now proceed to contracts number D1 through D2.
D1 through D2 are contract awards for planning and innovation. I have no questions.
Questions from other members. Director Eady?
None.
Director Lee?
None.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Ortiz?
Aye.
Director Ricao? Director Jakes, no further questions. We may now proceed to contract number E1.
E1 is a contract award for communications. No questions.
Director Ricao, any questions? Director Ortiz?
No question.
Chairman Barclay?
Question.
Director Lee?
None.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Jakes, we may now proceed to contract G1.
G1 is a contract award for technology. No questions.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Lee?
None.
Chairman Barclay?
Question.
Director Ortiz? Director Ricao?
No questions.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions, nor are there any other contracts.
Since there are no further questions on the contracts, may I have leave to place the 10 contracts on the omnibus?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ricao, that the 10 contracts be placed on the omnibus. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ricao?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Since there is no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ricao, that the omnibus be recommended for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Director Ricao?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes. You may now proceed to agenda item number 19.
Well, before we go to 19, I'm just gonna say this. Last month, I bragged that we got out of FAB in 20 minutes. I won't do that again. Finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo, that the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting for June 11, 2025 be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Director E?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Director Rakeo? Motion passes.
We are adjourned. Take a
25, Georgette, please call the roll.
Director Ricao,
Present.
Director Ortiz. Here. Chairman Barclay,
Here.
Director Jakes.
Here.
Director Lee. Here. Director Edie.
Here.
Chairman Barclay, you have a quorum. I will note for the record that Director Nemanja is absent.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. Georgette?
Chairman Barclay, we do have four public comments. And I will call the first person, Miss Betty Pittman. Is Betty Pittman here? I'm sorry.
Debbie.
Okay, Debbie Pittman. Debbie Pittman, you have 3 minutes. I'd ask that you come up to the chair. Can you come up to the chair? Where the microphone is. Help you. Here, grab my hand. Got it? All right, and so you're gonna take like 2 steps on to your left a little, angle. And the chair is just to your right hip.
Can I just stand?
No. The back, so you want to move touch against it. And the microphone is about a foot ahead of your head. On the table, there's a table right here. If you just speak loud, you'll have 3 minutes to talk. Okay? Give me a minute to go back to my seat so I can tell you you have 3, okay? All right. Okay, Ms. Pittman, you may begin.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to thank this board and also to Molly for working on the Braille bus stop signs that are being improved on. And I look forward to seeing those signs. And I'm here on behalf of the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois. And we thank you for listening to our concerns.
Is that it, Ms. Pittman?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you, Ms. Pittman, for attending. I know you work with Ms. Poppy, but I'd encourage you to continue to partner with her for further feedback on our work. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pittman.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Patricia Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Patricia Puente. I'm here because of the bus 157 in the city of Chicago, the one that's in front of City Hall. I went to the meeting and I told them that if they could please stop putting their cars, city cars parked on the side where the bus passes. And this was their response. CTA needs to paint the length of the bus stop in order for something, they just said CTA needs to paint the length of the bus stop. I am going back to City Hall because I have a picture where the cars are parked and they are parked there the whole day. The bus drivers are having a hard time. How do you say it? They're having a hard time letting people in and out.
Ms. Fuente, if you can, right, if you can email me a picture, I see it. Please email it to us. Thank you.
And the people can't get out off the car because they will hit the CTA card. I mean, the CTA card. No, the city's card. Another thing. The bus 62 bus in the terminal. I noticed that the one on Harlem and Archer. I'm not sure, but the barber shop that's on the corner, I think they're selling drugs to the bus drivers. If you could guys check on that, just because I saw it. But I guess that the lights that you have, the cameras that you have, they should show that because the barbers have the key to get into their bathrooms. And I'm like, how can the barbers have the key to get into the bathroom? So that's where they deliver, I guess, whatever they deliver. The other thing is, I had something else, something on the bus. Can they do their pre-ops and post-ops when they get to the terminals? Because I noticed that a lot of the buses, the back door doesn't work. So then if it's in seconds, an emergency, you can get out of the bus. You have to wait until you go all the way in the front. And a lot of people don't know how to switch the red part to get out through the windows. That's it. Thank you very much. I had more, but next meeting. Thank you and have a nice one.
Thank you.
Thank you for a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here and with your additional comments. With regards to planning and bus service, you can speak with Molly Poppy on our planning team, and as well as Donald Bonds, our Chief Transit Officer, around other operational issues.
Brian Adams. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, everybody else, I guess, watching. My name is Brian, spelled differently than the Canadian rock artist. I come from Bridgeport, and I'm here to speak on Route 31. Route 31 serves Bridgeport, the CHA assisted living that is on the I-95, a bit of the Sox Stadium that's also serviced by Route 35, and the IIT campus and the edges of Bronzeville. It runs approximately from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, every 30 minutes. And along this route, there is only along this 4-mile route, there is 3 grocery stores. Jewel on MLK Drive. There is a Cermak on Halsted, and there is a Mariano's on Ashland. In between the Halsted and the MLK grocery store, there is essentially nothing. And it would be of great help if the bus service was, the timetables were shortened to at least every 15 minutes. And if there is room in the budget, hopefully serving on the weekends. And if there is even more room, even going into a night shift, not 24 hours, but just a third shift. That's all. That's my request. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. And you also can speak with our planning team. Molly Poppy is here. That's exactly the type of feedback we're gathering from riders right now. So it's a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Is Steve Hastalis here? Mr. Chairman, that concludes our public comments for today.
Thank you. Our next item of business on the agenda was a report from our Citizens Advisory Board. It was to be given by Rob Johnson, Vice President of the Citizens Advisory Board. However, due to timing issues which have impacted scheduling, we need to defer the report to our July board meeting. May I have a motion to defer the report?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Ricao to refer the Citizens Advisory Board report to July 2025. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee? Yes. Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Raquejo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Our next item of business on the agenda is our acting president, Nora Learson's report, which will be presented at this.
Thank you, Chairman, Directors. Nice to be with you this morning. I'll start with what I know is top of mind for everyone, which is an update legislatively on what occurred in the past spring session. As we all know, the end of the session ended without a transit bill being passed by law. And what this means for us is that we've entered a new phase in this search for our funding for 2026. And specifically what this new phase will bring, as we've discussed, is now more heightened specific conversation around the potential impacts if funding is not received for CTA and for agencies in our region. What will drive that in large part will be RTA's budget process. So what we have occurring this week, tomorrow, is RTA's next board meeting, where what will be finalized are a lot of plans around the budget. But what I can tell you is that already RTA is asking agencies to prepare two separate budgets. One that assumes funding is coming at the levels that we need, but one that also prepares for what would occur if funding was not received. And certainly that latter proposition is severe and sobering for all of us and hard to stomach. But I do mention the two scenarios because that will be a lot of what we will be functioning like in the coming weeks and months to prepare for potential realities. And I'd add a third scenario that we are always looking at here, which is if we got the funding at the level we have requested, which is 1.5 billion for the region, what kind of service enhancements that would bring to us, because we always need to keep that in mind as well. There was a lot of activity in the final week of the spring session, but what we saw was some progress, particularly with regards to funding. We saw for the first time packages put forth that recognized the need for the region from a financial perspective, and that was welcome news. We saw some recognition of CTA's share of the funding and what was needed there as well. And that was also welcome news. We saw substantial proposed changes with regards to governance. And I know we've talked about that and we will continue to talk about that in the coming weeks. And what I see what lies ahead is an opportunity to now engage more deeply on what has been proposed across the board as an agency with what we now see the latest in terms of what members have put forth. It's obviously an historic, unprecedented time for our industry and our region. And I am going to approach that as the acting president in terms of the opportunity it presents. I think we see people activated across all levels of government, across advocacy groups about public transit. And I see a strong appetite that we're going to connect with in terms of elevating the importance of what we do and what we bring to communities during this time. And be at the table as an agency to contribute into what we know that has been my message throughout this, that we welcome reform that is focused on the outputs for our riders and the people that we serve. And we'll continue to contribute what we can to guide that reform in a way that we think keeps the focus on what riders need to see most. You heard us mention earlier during the service planning committee, and I want to be very clear, our 2025 service plan remains in place. We have had exciting plans for this year that you as a board approved in our 2025 budget. We've seen that happen in our service committee today. We've seen it with the introduction of the frequent network that's continuing to grow, and that will proceed. Because I think it's incredibly important that members of the legislature and the public are also reminded of what we can do with the money when we do receive it, and also reminded of what we've achieved in the past few years in terms of our hiring and our workforce and what we're ready to do when that money does come our way, because we stand ready to execute for the communities that we've committed these service commitments to, and we'll continue with that plan. Where the sobering, more serious information will lie is in the plans that we will potentially have to implement in 2026. And over the summer and into the fall, you will start to see public hearings and engagement with the public that will more specifically consider those outputs and consequences And I'll continue to keep you updated on what that looks like. As I mentioned, the RTA budget process will kick off with discussions this week from their board and the directions to the agencies, and that will precipitate responses from the agencies in that regard. But what I want to make clear is that through this process, we will never abandon our values as an agency in terms of equity, access, and servicing our riders in the best way possible. And a pillar of my leadership during this time has been engagement with people and organizations that we will now more deeply continue, which we even kicked off yesterday with something that I'll give in my further report of our CTA Chats initiative, where we are out with riders on a regular basis, hearing from them and what they want to see from CTA. So everything that crosses my desk and our table now, I see with fresh eyes in terms of the importance that it plays on the legislative front. I do want to take a few minutes to thank the people that got us through to the end of the legislative session. Our Government and Community Relations team has worked tirelessly throughout that period to engage with members, supported by staff across departments, our finance and legal departments, our planning departments. We're going to roll up our sleeves and continue that work now that we're continuing to fight for this funding. But I want to take a moment to reflect on all the work that went into that session as well. Also, our labor partners worked tirelessly. The Amalgamated Transit Union leadership organized 7 trips over the course of that session, brought hundreds of employees in a way that was also supported by our operations team to allow for those employees to take time off of their schedules to go advocate on behalf of our employees and our transit industry. So I also want to thank them for their leadership during that period as well. And certainly we're all rolling up our sleeves to continue it now. What I will walk through is a few updates across the pillars of principles that I focused on last time when I gave you a report, that my vision is that CTA is people-driven, performance-focused, centered in welcoming places, and rooted in those dynamic partnerships that we've talked about. So first with people, I am excited to announce the launch of the CTA Chats engagement program, which started last night at Union Station. I was there as part of it talking to riders, and this is something we had already had planned in place as part of our strategic plan, but we've now broadened it to make sure we are now immediately engaging with riders about the fiscal cliff, about what we're hearing that we want to make sure they want to see from both investments in the future and what they value in their service that they currently have that we keep in mind and top of mind. It was a great, cheerful event, and I look forward to future ones throughout this season as well. I also want to note our One Summer Chicago program will launch this month. On June 23rd, we're welcoming 250 One Summer Chicago interns, and I'm incredibly excited about that. As someone that started their career in public service 20 years ago as a teacher, I've been priming my teacher voice to talk with them and hear from them as well. And as we always do, we will engage with you, the board, and as you can see, the dynamic program we have in place. Last week, we also welcomed 21 leaders in transit from across the country as part of the LEAD program, which is an organization that brings transit leaders together from across the country to talk about issues they're facing. And I have to say, for me personally, it couldn't have been better time to come back home from Springfield and talk with people across the country about this shared issue that so many of us are facing in terms of COVID relief running out and looking for new revenue sources to assist with that. I also want to recognize Tanisha Marshall, the Vice President of the Red Line Extension, and Gus Lostanow, our Vice President of Control Center Operations and Bus Service Management, who are the participants this year from CTA in the LEAD program, and we're excited about what they will accomplish there. We're performance focused, and I want to particularly give an update on the impressive ridership numbers that we're seeing from our frequent bus network. So the J14, which is such a key route in our system, for example, since launching the frequent bus network on the J14, we've seen a 20% weekday service increase, a 35% weekend service increase. That's resulted in 40,000 additional riders year to date on that route. And that's an exciting accomplishment. I also want to thank throughout all these reports, our operations team, our bus supervision that are key to making the bus frequent network run effectively. The number 60 Blue Island route saw a 45% increase in service on the weekends and a 20% growth in ridership year to date. And the number 95, for example, saw a 20% weekday service increase and a 30% weekend service increase, resulting in 16,000 more riders on that route. And this is a message that I bring to Springfield and legislators as well, that when you add service, the ridership follows. And that's where we're going to see transformational change in our region in terms of access to transit. Ridership overall has some interesting positive developments. We're seeing a 4% year-over-year annual growth, which means we're consistently hitting approximately 1 million rides per day in the middle of the week, which is an exciting trend to have stay constant throughout our system. The Kennedy construction is an interesting example both of partnership as well as performance increase. So I worked closely with Secretary Biaggi at the Illinois Department of Transportation when this construction started to make sure that we were coordinating additional service as well as promotion of CTA to help lessen the burden of the traffic from that construction. And we've seen 1,000 additional daily rides on our Blue Line that we're attributing to that work and that partnership. We've been coordinating our messaging to ensure that commuters are aware of the alternative service options, and our infrastructure and operations team have been working very closely with the construction crews at IDOT to coordinate track access for the construction work. So this is an example of partnership across several departments to execute a promotion of transit ridership, and we've seen great success in that as well. Weekends and special events continue to be strong ridership performers for us. Sueños Festival added 90,000 riders over 2 days. The Beyonce and AC/DC concerts combined added 20,000 additional rides at Roosevelt Station alone. And an interesting statistic is that weekend ridership itself is well above 80% of pre-COVID levels. So we're seeing strong ridership in many particular facets. That is a promising indication of the efforts across the way. With regards to being centered in welcoming places, I want to focus on two specific initiatives related to the security pilots that I know the board approved for this year. And this is specifically with reference to the concept of crime prevention through environmental design that we've talked about with you. In two ways, we're kicking off a pilot with regards to elevator access, trying out, and this is something Director Lee specifically talked with us about, and we've seen other agencies do, trying out holding our elevator doors open for longer and seeing how that may deter activity that we don't want to occur in our elevators, particularly something that like urination or other activities that takes a lot of manpower and work to clean up and address. So we're excited to kind of initiate that at several stations, see how that works if we do see a decrease in the activity that we want to see on our system. Another area similar to that, and this is place in terms of our rail cars. The same concept, crime prevention through environmental design, is adjusting spaces to deter activity that you don't want to occur. And riders of our rail system will be very familiar with this, as I am. There is an area across from the motor cab on our rail cars that we often see activity occurring, particularly smoking, when in our system, that I want our staff to pilot initiatives to close that off, because I think that one activity will deter a lot of activity in our system that we don't want to see. And I just use those two examples as something that might seem small, but could have a big impact on activity. And I use it as an example of, with our places at CTA, we have major announcements coming soon in terms of the opening of our RPM stations. And we also have these smaller scale activities that we can think about our places that could hopefully improve the experience for riders across the board. In terms of partnerships, I think we've been talking about it today, but really want to celebrate the NARCAM pilot partnership that has come about from a lot of hard work across several departments at CTA, a lot of great advocacy, and I'm really excited to see where that goes. I think the NARCAM pilot is also just a symbol of who we are as an agency. We have a huge responsibility in terms of the people that we have on our system, what they bring onto our system, and what we need to do to help them in every way we can. And I'm excited about what that will bring. And I'll also say partnerships, after the bill didn't pass in Springfield, the first thing I did was reach out to the partners that we've created through that advocacy during that time. So groups like Active Transportation Alliance, the Metropolitan Planning Council, Access Living. I'm already seeing the fruits come bearing from those partnerships that I know will impact us in a positive way as we face the months ahead. And I'm excited about being focused on that in this time as well. So I'll pause there and appreciate the time to give you those various updates.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson, for your report and for the work that you and your team have done, not just over the past few weeks, but consistently over the past year and a half. The effort that the President's Office and Governmental Relations team has put into ongoing engagement with lawmakers, attempting to educate them on the realities of our current funding structure and advocating for the needs of our system have not gone unnoticed. The proposed change to the funding structure under the proposed legislation is a prime example of this effort. We successfully brought attention to the inequities built into the current formula and the long-term impact that underfunding has had on our system and the communities we serve. That is important work, and I want to acknowledge the leadership and persistence of the team in advancing those conversations. Of course, when the urgency of that critical fiscal challenge we face, it is concerning that the funding legislation was not resolved in the spring session. We're now in an even more critical time crunch to reach and resolve the issue of transportation funding. Without it, CTA, our sister transit agencies as well, will be forced to consider draconian cuts that would significantly and negatively impact services for our riders. That said, I remain optimistic. Positive outcome from this session's discussions that we've seen a shift even more so than before towards an acknowledgement that funding is indeed necessary. That emerging consensus is important and gives me hope that all parties involved will come back to the table with a shared commitment to producing a workable solution in a timely manner. As has been noted, another significant aspect of the proposed legislation is reform. I agree that accountability is needed, and we should all be committed to transparency and the highest standards of service. However, some of the proposed reforms in the legislation that passed out of the Senate are concerning, especially those that would centralize authority in a way that could only hinder transit authorities' ability to respond effectively and efficiently to the public that we serve. These kinds of structural changes risk undermining the very operations they're meant to improve. It is important that both legislators and the public fully understand how proposed reforms might affect the day-to-day provisions of service. I will do my part to ensure that awareness is raised and that potential impacts are fully considered. As we move forward, I look forward to working with all stakeholders, our agency colleagues, our partners in government, and our communities on a solution that ensures accountability and maintains our ability to deliver quality service. Most of all, we need a solution that centers the needs of the public and truly benefits them as well. Thank you very much for the hard work that you and your team have done to lead us through this period. And we thank you for your report this morning as well. Any other directors want to make comments at this time?
But I would just want to commend you for personally participating in one of those meetings with the general public with San over at the Union Station. I think it's vitally important, and for you being in the role that you're in, your presence means a lot to those that come to those meetings. I would like to participate or be a part of one of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know where the schedule has been posted.
Yes, we'll get that to you, and we're building it out for the next couple of months as well. And it had intended to engage with you and make sure you have an opportunity to attend. So thanks for mentioning it.
And from what you heard, and a lot of times we hear certain things in the board meeting, but to get out there with the public, is there any particular thing that you heard that resonated, that kind of rung a bell?
Yeah. I heard twice yesterday discussions of what we actually kind of talked about in the service planning meeting, but people having to rush out of work because they're aware that the frequency of a bus route reduces after a certain time. So people wanting that frequency to last later into the evening was something I heard from a few people last night that really, validated another message that I've also been saying to legislators, which is when people look at a CTA map, they see our routes spanning across the region. What you don't necessarily see is that given our budget constraints, the ends of those routes or sections of them may reduce frequency after a certain time. And it forces people to have to consider how to adjust their plans and schedules. So I heard a lot about frequency last night when I was out there, and it just kind of put the message even further about what we need to focus on in funding.
That's it from
Director Lee?
It's a lot, Nora. Okay. Well, thank you for your leadership in Springfield, but I know we have a lot of work ahead of us, and continually keep us updated and how we can, and also the public, how we can continue to support public transit as it's, and I know you're trying to embrace the positive. I'm a little nervous. I'm very scared, and this is people's way of getting A to B out of their lives in Chicago. And so it's scary to me, and I appreciate the leadership, but I know we're at a critical point, and it's, we got to stick to it, I guess, but thank you for that.
Director Jakes?
No, I have no comments.
Director Ortiz? Thank you again for your leadership. This is no easy task or normal on a normal setting, but right now it's even that much more critical to be out there. So thank you for bringing your skills to the table. On the concept of it's going to take all of us to get the right funding, I wonder what kinds of messages we can put on our system to encourage the public in general to also continue to put pressure on elected officials to make sure that funding is appropriately delivered for us to continue the services that are desired. So if there's any opportunity for that, I do think it's going to take all of us. And so the more people we get aware and to activate, I think the better we can all be in terms of knowing that we've, done every bit of approach to encourage this.
I appreciate that. And we'll keep you updated on our plans about how we're engaging riders and groups and getting all the voices at the table.
Yeah. Director Ricao.
Yeah, just wanted to first of all thank all of you who had to do double duty, both running the system and Springfield. Dozens of CTA folks were doing both. Folks advocating in Springfield, folks analyzing things, late at night, no weekends, etc. So thank you for all that work. Three things that you mentioned are really important, and I wanted to offer myself as others are offering themselves here. Moving forward, one is centering our values, and you already mentioned a few, like equity, collaboration, transparency. I think we focus on those and keep those alive. I am optimistic, like the chairman is, on success. There's another part that is about the message and the story that we need to tell. And then as important as the message is backing that up with actual results, right? We cannot tell a story that is not based on reality. So we need to figure out how do we communicate the success and the improvements and how that translates into funding. But again, the messaging is something that I'm worried about, because even as you were describing the scenarios that RTA is going to present to CTA, you mentioned that per law, we have to develop a scenario with the funds that we need and another one with the cuts, right? And I would like to start all of us reframing this, because the cut scenario we have to do per the legislation. But the other one, I wouldn't call it the funding that we need. I would call it business as usual. And business as usual has not worked well for anyone. So I want to call the third scenario the one that is the money that we need. And 2 years ago, 26 organizations representing very broad spectrum from labor to businesses to community-based organizations, transit experts, we all agreed that the ballpark that we need is $1.5 billion. And so I would like to lead with that being the ask. That is the funding that we need. And the rest are the business as usual budget that every year we do, and we all know is not enough. And then the even worse scenario, which is having to make those draconian and impossible cuts that we have to do. So I wanted to, again, encourage everybody to keep that in mind. Know that you have, as you mentioned, many advocates behind you on the proper funding, which is, again, at minimum $1.5 billion. And just use the opportunity that we have right now to educate folks on what would it take to expand every bus line to 10 minutes, as Brian was mentioning today, or what would it take to eliminate all the slow zones in the system, or how much is a train car? All of those things people just don't know. So we need to do better at communicating that. But again, my main concern is us being pushed into this corner of either or, these two scenarios, the cuts or the business as usual, instead of centering also this other third scenario, which to me is scenario number one, not the third, which is we need $1.5 billion minimum to deliver. And by the way, this state of Illinois has a GDP equal or exceeding that of Switzerland, and we're still fighting over this basic funding. And if we were to divide by the number of people who live in the metropolitan area, where we're asking is 40 cents per resident of the metropolitan area every day. So would you have 40 cents every day to put into your system? Is what we're asking to residents and to legislators, governor, etc. So anyway, just wanted to make sure that we focus on those three scenarios. And I personally will be pushing for number one being the funding that we need, which is again, not covering that gap that we have, but what we need to have the frequencies that we deserve, the security that we deserve, and the customer experience that we deserve. So count on me for those conversations, and I'll be joining those conversations with writers, but also any conversations with legislators that you need me to be part of. I'll be happy to.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you again. Our next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the special board meeting of May 8th, 2025. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo, that we approve the minutes from the May 8th special board meeting. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Rakeo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Bartley?
Yeah.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
We also need to approve the minutes of our regular board meeting of May 14th, 2025. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Rakeo?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next item on the agenda is executive session. Kent Ray, my understanding that today we do have an executive session.
Mr. Chairman, there will be an executive session today. The Readings Act 5 ISBS 20, Section 2C 11-21.
I will now entertain a motion to recess into executive session for reasons stated by council.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo, that the board will move into executive session. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Rakeo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Yes. Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
2025.
May I please have a motion to approve the closed session minutes for April 9th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Raquel, that the closed session minutes from April 9th, 2025 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee? Director Eady? Motion passes.
We will now address board agenda item 6B. Kent?
Chairman, in item 6B, the board reviewed a proposed settlement of the lawsuit action Bianca Murphy, independent administrator for the estate of Sherry Fisher, deceased, versus Felicia Gage, Chicago Transit Authority, case number 2024L002673, pending in the Circuit Court of Cook County in the amount of $6 million.
Now entertain a motion to approve settlement in the amount of $6 million in the lawsuit entitled Bianca Murphy, independent administrator of the estate of Jerry Fisher, deceased, versus Felicia Gage and Chicago Transit Authority, case number 2024L002673, pending in the Circuit Court of Cook County.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Raquel, that the board will approve the settlement in the amount of $6 million in the lawsuit of Bianca Murphy, independent administrator for the estate of Sherry Fisher, deceased, versus Felicia Gage and the Chicago Transit Authority. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Raquel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
We will now address board agenda item 7, board matters. Georgette, do we have any board matters today?
Mr. Chairman, there are no board matters.
Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Ortiz.
Yes, thank you. The committee met earlier this morning and approved the September 11, 2024 committee minutes. The committee reviewed 2 ordinances. The first one, the review of an ordinance authorizing a route realignment of bus routes, number 53 Pulaski, number N53 Pulaski Owl, and number 53A South Pulaski, and the review of an ordinance authorizing the implementation of Sunday service and an extension of bus route number 93 California Dodge. The committee placed the 2 ordinances on the omnibus. The committee approved and recommended the board approval, the 2 ordinances. That concludes my report, Chairman Barclay.
Thank you, Director Ortiz. I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Raquel to approve the omnibus. Take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Raquel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Jakes.
The committee met earlier this morning and approved the June 11, 2025 committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee reviewed 13 ordinances. Number 1, review of an ordinance amending ordinance 024-143, approving the fiscal years 2025 through 2029 capital improvement program. Number 2, review of an ordinance authorizing a first amendment to a license agreement with PACE for the use of parking spaces at the Rosemont Park and Ride Lot for PACE Van Go vehicle program. 3, review of an ordinance authorizing payment of relocation expenses arising from the acquisition of property located at 11900 South Cottage Grove Avenue for the RLE project. 4, review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 411-413 West 105th Street, Chicago for the RLE project. 5, review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 12200-12256 South Cottage Grove Avenue, Chicago for the RLE project. 6, review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 401-407 West 104th Street, Chicago for the RLE project. 7, review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Metra Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago for the RLE project. 8, review of an ordinance declaring surplus and authorizing the sale of real property located at 5426-5446 South Calumet Avenue, Chicago. to City Colleges of Chicago. 9, review of an ordinance authorizing intergovernmental license agreement for CTA's use of Metra's bathroom facilities at 504 East 115th Street in Chicago for the Frequent Network Project. 10, review of an ordinance authorizing a pilot program agreement, Sensonic US Incorporated for safety pilot through the CETA Innovation Studio Program. 11, review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of primary and excess property insurance coverage for policy year 2025 through 2026. 12, review of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to a contract with CRRC CFANG America JV for rail cars. 13, review of an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with the County of Cook through the County of Cook Health and Hospital System to install, operate, and maintain public health vending machines on CTA property dispensing Nikon at rail stations. The committee also reviewed 10 contracts. The committee placed the 13 ordinances and 10 of the contracts on the omnibus. The committee approved and recommended for board approval 13 ordinances and 10 contracts. This concludes the report of Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee.
Thank you, Director Jakes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo that the omnibus be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Rakeo?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order on the of business is the construction report, which we are going to defer this month. Georgette, do we need a motion?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo that the construction report be deferred. Take a roll call vote. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Rakeo?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Our final order of business is new business. Georgette, is there any new business?
Chairman Barclay, there is no new business.
Since there's no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn the Chicago Transit Board meeting of June 11th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Rakeo that the meeting of June 11th, 2025 be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Rakeo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.